Hi, I'm Dan and I attend St. Peter's in Brockley. You are currently listening to our Talks podcast for our Sunday services.
If you're new, welcome. We won't have a chance to meet properly because I'm leaving. But it would have been nice to meet you guys. It's, I guess in a way, I've been thinking about it over the last hour. It's a bit of a strange talk today because it's kind of like my leaving talk. And someone said to me earlier, I felt like you tried to distill all God's been doing and giving it to us in like half an hour or whatever it ends up being. That's not really what I'm trying to do, but it might feel like that. I hope it feels like that, because my prayer is just that God speaks to you in the way that you need tonight as well. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to you as a church, and especially as a service. This is an incredible service. I say it every time. It's just, you guys are so hungry for God. It doesn't feel like work. Like, this is our job, but it doesn't feel like it. It's such a joy to be here. And as Ben said, I went off to St. James Kidbrooke for a couple of years and then came back to this service in September. And I just feel so welcomed by you guys. I feel very loved. And it's just, I'm going to miss this time. I miss this time with you, but also with you guys in the presence of God as well. So thank you. Thanks for being an amazing church. Just a real, just beautiful church full of people who are doing their best to love God in their own way as well. So thank you. Thank you for just being encouraging as well. Thanks for putting up with me. And, my learning, your grace towards us is always incredible. Would also just want to thank Ben and Hanel and Anne White and Andy Coombe and those guys. But just, my experience of church when I was younger was actually of church pain, of leadership, kind of causing a lot of pain. It was quite destructive, which I don't have time to tell you about. And so for me, being with these guys has been healing for many reasons. Ben and I, as we said, we lived together 16 years ago before we had kids and got married and stuff. Actually, it was the year you were engaged, so you were planning on being married. And Ben's 3 years younger than me. And I used to think, like, when I grow up, I want to be like Ben. Because you're just a man of integrity. And I think when you've had church pain, then actually having a leader of integrity and of love and of grace and of kindness and a man who just, this is what you get, sorry. But that's what you get. But at least that's really comforting. And that's amazing that he's just a man of the Spirit who follows the Spirit, but also loves really well. There's been times in my own life where I've been on the floor in anxiety, like actual anxiety. And Ben's just sat with me for an hour. So if you're new to this church, it's the best church you'll ever find. It's full of just a beautiful diversity in both age and in every way, ethnicity and socioeconomic status. I feel like this church feels like what you want church to be. And so it's just been a real privilege and a blessing, and just want to honor you guys for your leadership here and everything you've done. So thank you. You are amazing. I'm not going to go on too many thank yous. I said it was a wedding the other day. There was 9 speeches. No one wants that. So it's not going to be a wedding speech. It's not a farewell speech in that way. So what are we doing? So Sarah and me and the boys are flying to California. And Sarah's been an amazing stay-at-home mum for 5 years. And a couple of years ago, I said to her, if you could do anything, if we can make it about you, what would you do? And she just has this real passion for ministry and seeing more of God. And so 12 years ago, I went to a church called Bethel Church, which has a ministry training school attached to it. And she said, I'd like to do that. And I'm like, well, who wouldn't want to go to California for a year? Okay. So we've decided to do that. So Sarah's going to go and train. And essentially Bethel's ministry school is very much, similar to ours, which is about identity. Who is God, and then who am I, and then what's my calling, which is essentially what we're going to talk about today. Actually, by the way, that subject looks great. I think I want to sign up. It was such a good video. Well done, Liam, on the editing on that. But it's really exciting. I think it's just really exciting to invest in God and to invest in yourself in God, and also to be invested in by other people too. So we're on the same journey as many of you hopefully will sign up for the discipleship year here. It's exciting for us. Lincoln will go to their school. He's my 5-year-old. And then Hunter, who's 2.5, he gets to be with me during the day. So he will go to nursery for a few mornings. But I feel like God's really told me just to focus on being a good dad as well. So it's really, it'd be an amazing time. The other thing God's asked me to do, or us to do, is we've been drawn to, and if you've heard me preach a few times, you'll know kind of what my shtick is around, like, we are made body, mind, and spirit. That God has created all three, and that He values all three. When He made stuff, He said it was good. So you are good, whether you believe it or not. Actually, the better interpretation of that is beautiful. Tov is the Hebrew word. You are beautiful. And so, but actually, I feel like that God's asked us to do something in the area of Christian body, mind, and spirit, and valuing our bodies and stuff like that too. So I'll be developing that as well. So that's what we're doing. It feels like God's asked us to trust Him by leaving this amazing place and to step out and to literally give Him everything. Like, we're giving Him everything we possibly can to go after what He has for us. It can feel a bit extreme though, doesn't it? Giving up everything. And I have an amazing life. I had an amazing life up until today. It was my last day. But it's been amazing, 7 years. One of the dreams in life is that we get to work or do life with our friends. Well, I get to do it with my best friend. Like, I live on the same street. I bump into many of you in the streets, or we meet for coffees at the station. Like, my time in London, I've been here 20 years, and I've never experienced a community, like an actual community. And it's so beautiful to have that here in this amazing church where, God's grace and power is here all the time. And so we're leaving that. I'm trusted here as, Ben trusts me to go to other churches. He trusts me to go off and to do these things. When I came out to him last year and said, I think we should do a discipleship year, your initial reaction was, we're too busy, mate, like no chance. But then actually you trusted me. And how many of us want to be trusted by our leaders? Like, we want that. We want to present things and they go, yeah, well, I don't get it. I don't think you even got it when I said, can I be the Millwall chaplain? I think you said that sounds like a jolly, of which it was. But it was brilliant. And actually, but again, we've seen God move powerfully in that place. And so, I'm giving up our home, we're giving up our community, this brilliant life that we have here. My life is and has been amazing. So why risk it all? Why risk everything? Why risk this incredible place with all that we have and all that we ever want? Why risk that? To go to America, which, if you haven't noticed, slightly turbulent right now. And a lot of people are like, are you sure you want to go? And I'm like, I know I want to follow Jesus. And so partly why are we going is because when I decided to follow Jesus, we decided as a family, all of us, to follow Jesus. And that looks like going either where He's going or where He's leading us as a family. And it seems like, and it is, that's where He's leading us. We don't really have any solid plans after, but what we do have is a firm foundation, which is God. And so therefore we can trust that whatever happens, that He is good. We just have to look to Him and it will be fine. So following Jesus means just that, following Him. I think for a lot of the times in my life, I thought, Christianity is like, yeah, Jesus, I'm following you. But actually, can you come and have a look at what I'm up to? And can we get involved in this? And sometimes He does. Because God is a good father, and good fathers, they see what their kids are playing with and what they're doing, and they go to that. But I think often it's not just that. It is a relationship where also as the father says, why don't you come over here? I've got something good for you over here. And those of you who have kids or work with kids will know they don't always do what you want them to do. But actually, sometimes you have the best things for them, but they fight against that. Following Jesus is just putting your trust in Him. And we're going to dig into that tonight. So why give Him your whole life? This is a question for you. Why give Him your whole life? Does giving Jesus your whole life, does it make you feel scared? Is there any fear in there? Hands up if you feel fearful of letting someone else control your own life. I have. It's a bit scary, isn't it? It scares us to give control to other people because we love control. We love to control our own life, don't we? We love to control the situations. The reason we love to control our life is a reaction, or it's control is because we fear things going wrong. We fear being rejected, or we fear shame, or we feel hurt. So if I could just control the situation, it'll be fine. If I could just control sometimes this person, then it'll all be fine. If I could just control things. So control is a reaction to fear. So I don't think control is just about pride. Sometimes we may have had bosses where it feels like they're quite proud and it's only their way that's the only way. But actually, I think a lot of it is about protection. I'm trying to control this to protect myself. And the ultimate problem with that is the unpredictability of life, that we can't control everything. We have this desire for freedom and a desire for control. There's these kind of two conflicting truths at the same time. And it reveals this deeper tension within us about, as I said, the longing for freedom paired with the discomfort of uncertainty. Or maybe following Jesus is scary because deep down we struggle to trust him. Like, deep down, do I really believe you're going to come through for me? Deep down, are you really going to do something that is going to benefit me? Or maybe it's because we've had unanswered prayers. God help. And it feels like those prayers may not have been answered in the way that we wanted them answered or the way that we expected. And that can be confusing, that can be painful, that can be disappointing, and it can also sometimes knock our faith. And I'm going to be real, I've had a moment like that this week where we've been applying for this visa for so long. There's a huge backlog because they put a pause on student visas. And so we'd booked our flights and this stuff. And lots of you have been thankfully, faithfully praying that we're going to get our visa and we're going to get on that flight on Tuesday. And then I asked for an expedited interview and then they said no. And I'm like, God, like, what? Like, we're all praying, and like, I trust you. Like, I will stand up every week and say, I trust you. And I had this moment of wrestling. And actually, for me, it was beautiful in hindsight because I couldn't say that to my parents growing up. I couldn't say, I'm really disappointed. I feel really sad. My parents wouldn't have reacted so well. And I actually felt really held by God in that moment where afterwards I was like, John, thank you that I could just go, bah! Like I could just vent, I could let it all out. But I felt held by a father who was like, it's okay, I get it. Like he kind of validates how I'm feeling and then also is able to help reframe things for me as well. And what the reframing was is that, do I question his goodness? No, he's still good. His goodness is not dependent on my circumstances or on my unmet prayers. He's still good, and if I trust that he's good, I know that he's in this situation and that we've all prayed about this, so therefore, God works good for those, all things to the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So I feel called to a purpose, and yet his goodness remains, and I do love him. So ultimately, I believe we can still get on that flight. One of the verses God led me to this week, if you know the Bible at all, if you don't, then there's a passage in Daniel 3 or 4 in the Old Testament where there's three guys called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and it's back when they were the Jewish people were taken into exile. And the king put up a big golden statue and said, you've all got to worship the statue. These guys said, we're not going to worship the statue, we're only going to worship God. And the king says, okay, if you're not going to do that, we're going to throw you into a big furnace. And then they basically say, our God can deliver us from your hand. But even if he doesn't, we're still going to call him God. And so I firmly believe God can put me on that flight on Tuesday. Even if he doesn't, he is still good and he's still God. So there are moments of wrestle in our faith. Like, faith is both brilliant, life is not easy. We have to mix all the two together. But there is something about when we follow Jesus, we follow him regardless of our circumstances. We may fear following Jesus or giving him the reins to our life because we're scared we're going to miss out on stuff, or that God will make us do something we don't want to do, or maybe even go somewhere we don't want to go. Does anyone worry that if I say to Jesus, yes, he's going to make me do something I don't want to do? Yeah, a few of us. He's going to make me do that. Well, I just want to speak into that very briefly. In the book of 1 John, says the New Testament, it says that God is love. And it describes, and love in the Greek in that way is agape love. And fortunately, Paul then describes later on is it 1 or 2 Corinthians? 1 Corinthians 13. What love is. Love is patient, love is kind. It goes through this list. So we know what love is, and therefore we know what God is. Love, real godly love, at the very core of it has to have choice. If I try and make you love or do those things, that's not love. If I try and coerce or manipulate or make these things happen, that's not love. If you heard of your friend in a relationship with somebody and you thought the other person was coercive, you'd be like, that ain't love. Like, that's not loving. Love, God wove choice into the fabric of creation when he put 2 trees in the garden. He did say you can have anything else, just don't have that one thing. But he never removed choice. Love has to have choice at the center of it. God won't make you do anything. He won't make you do anything, but he will invite you into a place of discomfort. He will invite you to trust him. He will invite you to step outside of your comfort zone, but it's your choice. And he never removes that choice. And don't fear saying no to God. It might not be the best idea, but he's not then going to go, right, that's it, you said no, you're going to be punished. Sometimes he's like, okay, cool, we'll talk about it another time. He's a good dad. Ben said it early on. He's a good dad. And Sarah and I, years ago, when we were talking about do we have a family or not, we weren't really that convinced we wanted a family, to be going to be honest. We really had a good marriage and we didn't want to ruin it. Not that they do, they enhance it, blah, blah, blah. But that was I'm just being real, that was our conversation. And then we spoke to some people and they were very prophetic and they were like, can we just ask you about where you're at with kids? We feel there's some fear there. And they said, God's saying he's not going to make you do anything, but he just wants to have a conversation. And that really stayed with me for years, that he's not going to make you do anything. He's a good father and he just wants a conversation. There was a time when, I reckon about 11 years ago, when I felt God say, would you give up alcohol? And I went, nope, I quite like it. And he went, all right, we'll talk about it another time. And he asked me every year for 11 years, or maybe 10 years. And then in the end, I was like, yeah, I'll give it up. But he never punished me. He just like, okay, cool, you're not ready. He's a good dad. He might have saved me from I saved a lot of money if I'd have said yes. But also, you can say no to God. I don't recommend it. I don't know, he could have done some great things with me over the last 10 years. I don't know. I don't recommend it. But my point is that he's a good God. He gives us choice. He always has done. So, don't fear saying no. Probably a good idea to say yes. So why on earth follow Jesus? Well, deep down, believe it or not, you are made for greatness. You are made for significance. And you know this as a kid. Do you want to know how you know it as a kid? Every kid wants to be something significant. My boys, if you see them, even today in Ben's garden in 30-degree heat, dressed like Hulk. They're dressed like superheroes. Every kid, you still do, right, Nick? I'm joking. Every kid wants to be something significant. It might be a doctor or a dancer or an artist or a vicar. Said no kid ever. But the point is that you want to be great. And does that sound like I've made it up? Well, it does a bit, but it's not. It's actually science. So where is it? Oh, I've deleted it. It doesn't matter. I know it anyway. There's a longitudinal study by a guy called George Lang. And what this study did is it said that 98% of 5-year-olds measured in the genius range for problem solving, creating, and divergent thinking. So divergent thinking outside of the box. 98% of 5-year-olds, could have been 100%, but maybe some of those 5-year-olds didn't have the best environment. 98% of 5-year-olds as genius. You were all genius when you were 5 years old in the areas of problem solving, creative thinking, divergent thinking. The other day, I'm reading a book with my 5-year-old Lincoln, and there's an octopus on this man's wrist. And I was like, Lincoln, what would you do if there was an octopus on your wrist? And I'm thinking, poke it in the eye, get a knife, get it off. And he's 5 years old, and he says, I'd cook it. All right, you're underwater, son. What would you do now? I'd find an underwater volcano, then I'd cook it. So 5-year-olds think outside of the box. Divergent thinking, they're genius. When you get to 10 years old, only 30% of 10-year-olds. 98% to 30% by the age of 10. By the time you're an adult, only 2%. That shows us, what Land's study would show us, is that there is innate genius and greatness in all of us, but yet our environments will condition it out of us or educate it out of us as well. The point of that is, you know you're great, but the world wants to tell you different. The world will tell you you're not good enough. Only the special people get to do that. Only those people get to do that. What's wrong with you? You might have heard that as a kid. What's wrong with you? You're telling someone there's something wrong with them instead of going, that's a weird way to get rid of an octopus. The world will condition it out of us. We go from being genius, and as you're a kid, there's a few of you here tonight, you're under 25. I think that's a good marker. Maybe more. Life's exciting. Your first jobs, your first dates, your first holidays without your parents, you go to university. Like, life is full of opportunity. Even going to the pub used to be exciting. Now you need a mortgage to do it. But it used to just be exciting to go and do these things. And then slowly over time, it starts to get harder and life starts to fizzle out a bit. The excitement of it all tends to go. And the point of that is that why follow Jesus? Because Jesus made you for greatness. You go from being genius, awe-inspired, full of life and joy to, I'm okay. Just got to get through this week. Or that is just the way life is. You see how like the world wants to just reduce us, just to accepting less. Why follow Jesus? Because God has made you amazing and he's made you for more. The world wants to limit you, but Jesus wants to free and restore us. The good news is that we don't have to live with that limited life. We can live a life of satisfaction and fullness. In John 10:10, Jesus says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Not just life, but abundantly. The enemy, I think, comes to steal your hope, kill your dreams, and destroy your destiny. But Jesus comes to give you freedom, hope, healing, fullness of life, an abundant one at that. So today I want to look at one of my favorite passages on this in Matthew 16:13-19. I'm going to zip through it, but it's kind of the only theological bit I've got in this talk. So it says in Matthew 16, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Amen. That's the end of that one. So I want to break this down quickly. So Jesus is with his disciples. So the disciples, if you don't know, is a bunch of guys who followed Jesus. And probably girls at the time. So a bunch of people followed Jesus, see him doing amazing things, probably lots of miracles by now. He dropped a few truth bombs. And they're like, whoa, this is so cool. This guy's got the words of life and all that sort of stuff. So they've seen this happen. And then during this, he's got his guys around him. And he's like, guys, who do the others say I am? Who do the crowds that are following me say I am? And they're like, they say you're like one of those great guys of the past. You're like one of those prophets. And he's like, cool. Who do you say I am? Why does Jesus ask this? Why does he ask who others say he is first before he comes on to who do you say I am? He asked that question because we are all formed as humans by a process called socialization. Socialization is the process by which we as children learn acceptable behaviors and what society and culture deems to be good and right and wrong and those sort of things too. Which means that our initial perspectives on God are formed by our community, by our family, by our friends, by our peers. But at some point in our life, there comes a moment of reckoning. It may be tonight. You may have had it before. You may have it in the future. Who do I say God is? Not who do they say he is. Who do I say that God is? Now, the disciples, as I said, they answered that others thought you were great. You were like a great man. And Jesus replies, as I said, cool, but who do you say I am? How do you get to know someone well? You spend time with them. It's pretty simple. Have you ever been on holiday with somebody and not been friends with them after? A few laughs. Have you ever been friends with somebody and thought, I'll be friends with this guy or girl for life? Yeah, because you've spent a lot of time, intensive time with people. And when you spend time with people, that's how you get to know who people really are. And so Simon, who's one of Jesus' disciples, has spent loads of time with Jesus and therefore has got quite close to the Father. And he's responded, so he knows Jesus now, and he's knowing the Father. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but my Father in heaven. This is key. We can know of Jesus and we can know about Jesus, but revelation of who he really is only comes from spending time with him and from the Father in heaven. Simon had spent time with Jesus, and I said he grew closer to God, and therefore the revelation of who Jesus was came from God. And then Jesus says to Simon in response to this revelation Simon's had, saying, and I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. What's my point? We don't discover who we really are. We're all on this journey of who am I, why am I here? We don't discover who we really are by culture, by books, by podcasts, by family or friends, by social media, by any other means. We only discover who we are when we discover who Jesus is. If you want to discover who you really are, you have to find who Jesus is. And when Simon discovers who Jesus is, we see that he starts to discover who he is. So Simon says, you are the Messiah, you are the Son of God. And then Jesus says, and I will tell you who you are. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. And I think what's really significant is that Jesus is also saying to Peter, this is my paraphrase, you think that you're Simon. You'll see there's a name change here. You think you're Simon. You think that you're just a fisherman from Galilee who was rejected and who was beaten down by life and broken, because that is probably what a life without me looks like. But let me tell you what a life with me looks like. You are Peter. You are significant. You were born brilliant, and you have a purpose. So many of us are looking for a purpose. And he says that on this I will build my church. Jesus doesn't define us by our past, but he defined us by his purpose. He doesn't define us by our past or even who we think we are, but by his purpose for us. So why change Simon's name? We see name changes throughout the Bible all the time. Biblically, names aren't labels. They are intrinsically linked to our identity, our calling, and our purpose. A name change comes with transformation, commissioning, and restoration. So Jesus isn't just changing Simon's name to Peter based on a character, but he's prophetically calling him into his destiny. He's saying, you are no longer Simon, you are Peter. There's an interesting thing later on in the text where Peter actually walks away from Jesus, and then his name changes back to Simon until he discovers Jesus again. But I'll let Liam explain that to you another time. As I said, I was at this wedding the other day, and one of the 7 speeches, and one of them was from a little bit of a squiffy 16-year-old. He'd had a few beers illegally. But actually, he kind of wanted to grab the mic. And it's a good friend of mine, Ryan. I was the best man at the wedding. And it's actually brought everybody to tears. This 16-year-old, with a Mancunian accent. I can't really do it. But he was basically like, I didn't know how one person could change a family and change me. And he's only 16, and he saved up 400 quid at 16 to change his name. There's something powerful about changing our name. God calls us who we really are. And there's something powerful. I'm not saying you have to change your name, but I'm saying that actually God has a destiny for you, and it's attached to who you are, but we can only get there when we realize who he really is. Simon is, anyone here, is he your favorite disciple? Has anyone got Simon as a favorite disciple? Simon Peter? Some people like him. Ben loves him. I'm a John fan myself, but that probably is actually our characters. I just want to sit around and talk about love, and you want to do something. So Peter, or you imagine Ben. Ben's a fisherman, and he meets Jesus because Jesus is preaching on the shore one day. But I think the crowds are so big. He says to Peter, "Can I borrow your boat? Because I've got to step back a bit, and because I've got to preach to all these guys." So Simon Peter and his brother and their mates have been up all night fishing and didn't catch anything. And then after Jesus preaches, he says to Peter, "Have you tried chucking your nets on the other side?" And you can imagine Peter as a fisherman going, "I know what I'm doing." How many of us love it when someone comes and tells us how to do our job? None of us. But he'd clearly seen something in Jesus to go, all right, we'll try it. He clearly heard something in the message. He's like, this guy's on something. So he's gone, okay, cool, we'll try it. So he throws it on there, and then the Bible says that the catch in the net was so vast, the boat begins to sink, and they have to call their mates to come and help get this in. And what's amazing is Peter's response to Jesus. And Peter says to Jesus, he gets on his knees and he cries out, "Get away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." We can all discount ourselves from following Jesus because we think we're not good enough. If you really knew what I'd done, Jesus, if you really knew what was in my mind, if you really knew what I think, if you really knew that, just don't bother with me. Invest in someone else. Spend time with someone else. We can discount ourselves. And Jesus' response is so Jesus. It's so kind. It's so loving. It's so affirming. It's so, I'm just going to ignore what you said. He says to him, don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. He doesn't get involved in Simon's, I'm a slug, just leave me alone type of stuff. Jesus is saying, don't worry. I will give you your purpose. And then he actually does. He starts to follow him. Essentially, Jesus is saying, right now, don't worry about your moral goodness. It is important. Follow me. Become the person you're supposed to be. And in that process, we call it sanctification in the church, where we follow Jesus and we become more like him. But follow me, find your purpose, and then you'll find who you're supposed to be. Peter is left with a decision, and that's whether to believe Jesus or not. How many of us have got maybe words spoken over us by the Christians that are probably accurate and from God, and we just have done nothing about them? Yeah. That's very brave. I didn't expect an answer, but thank you for that. I've had words over my life as well, and I'm like, do I actually believe you? That seems a bit too big, actually. I think I maybe want a bit of a quieter life. We have to choose to accept what he says about us, and not just accept it, but then start to walk on the path that will get us there. When we discover who God is, we discover who we are, and we discover why we are alive. And that is what brings us fullness of life. I've worked with footballers, like I've said. I worked for the UN for quite a long time. I worked in government. I worked with people who are at the top of their game. I've got to speak in Parliament before. That's not boasting. I do not know why God got me to do it. Genuinely, I was so uneducated and useless. But I think it was because I was the only one who'd ask him what to do. But basically, what I'm saying is I've met people at the top that you would read about in the press. They're not satisfied. It doesn't matter. You could have all that stuff. But fullness of life comes from finding out who God is, who am I, and what's my godly purpose on the earth. That is what brings fullness of life. That is what brings satisfaction. The other stuff doesn't do it. Pastor Bill Johnson of Bethel Church, where we're going to go to in the States, says, and I love this, when you discover who you're meant to be, you'll never want to be anyone else. Stop trying to be like anyone else. Just discover who God's made you to be. I've noticed when Jesus called people to follow him, he didn't say the things that I often say to people, which is, you need to follow Jesus because he died for your sins. 100% true. Don't hear otherwise. 100% true. But he didn't say that. He also didn't say, you need to follow me to get into heaven. Or you need to follow me because I'm God. And again, often we hear Christians say that. This is why you need to believe in Jesus. Jesus doesn't use that. They're all true, and they're all really important, and they're all foundations of our faith, and that's what we learn. But his line to get people to follow him was like, I know there's a desire in your heart. Why don't you follow me and step into that? Why don't you become all you're supposed to be? And then all the other stuff is part of the journey along the way. The good news is that God Almighty came to earth in the shape of a human, and he freed us internally and externally from limitations that transforms us into people who are here to change the world. And our world needs changing right now. I think we all know that. We're here to change it from a place of darkness into a place of light, from a place of slavery to a place of freedom, and from a place of just getting by to a place of abundance. And I'm not talking about money when it comes to that. Although, sometimes. But not now. He wants us to live a life that is full, and following him with everything we are is that. So what does that look like? to follow him. I realize I've gone on. It's realizing that I am not in control, even when I want to be. That I don't have all the answers, that my wisdom is limited, that I've tried to run life my own way and it hasn't worked. I tried that in my 20s. My life was an absolute car crash. It doesn't work. It's realizing that we've all sinned and we've all messed up and we've all fallen short. We all need saving. And it's turning from a self-reliance and the illusion that I am the center of the universe. We surrender to the one person who doesn't want to control us. That's what following Jesus looks like. He's the one person who doesn't want to control us. So when I give him my life, I give it to the one person who's like, I am the guy who sets people free. I'm not the guy who enslaves. We can be liberated from the things that hold us back. We can be liberated from mindsets. God can renew us and restore us. So what does that look like? Well, for me, it looks like moving my family to America, simply. Following Jesus is giving up all this wonderful life that we have here, knowing that he's good. Sarah and I have dreamt about this Christian ministry that I spoke about for many years. And now we have to believe, even though he's clearly told us to do it, are we going to do this? It's a bit like Peter. It's lovely to receive big prophetic words, but I've also got to now step into it. I'm going to skip all that. This is a side note. Many people ask, how do I know I'm called? How do I know? You talk about calling, you know about these things. How do I know God's saying this to me, whether I should be doing this? I've created a checklist, which is not in the Bible. But we've created it because we have so many people come to us saying maybe we feel called to Christian leadership or things like that. And I think this is helpful. And you don't have to tick all the boxes, but I think it's helpful to go, okay, cool, well, I tick 2 or 3 of these. Maybe I'm in process of discerning whether God's got something for me. Simply, number one, could be that there's a desire in your heart. That God put a desire in your heart for something. It could be justice. It could be mission. It could be local. It could be art. It could be business. There's a desire in your heart to do something. So that's number one. Is there a desire in you? That doesn't also mean that that's from God. So this is the tricky thing. This is why we need quite a few of these things to kind of check stuff against. Because I've desired things that would definitely not from God. So that doesn't always mean it's from God. Number 2, Scripture. When you're reading the Bible, things popping out and talking to you about the thing that you're desiring. Does that make sense? Like you're kind of like, oh yeah, like I thought about this thing the other day and then I'm reading the Bible and it feels like it's talking to that very thing. That is also a really helpful check thing. Opportunity, I think, is a key one too. Is there an opportunity for you to do this? Again, not always. None of these are set in stone, but I think it's good to keep these in mind and start to work them through. Funding can be, but not always. So it's like, oh, God's put this on my heart, and then there's an opportunity to do it, and then someone's offered to pay for it. Like that, again, doesn't always happen. Sometimes, like us going to America, it's not always the case. You don't always have all the money up front, but also you can trust in God too that it will turn up. What do other people say about you? Other people who know Jesus and know you and love you, I do think it's important. That's why villages are so important, to actually become part of a community who know you and love you and trust you. So when you say, I feel like God's saying this to me, people who know you can pray into it, but they can also say, yeah, that makes total sense. Or, yeah, no, I don't think so. You're not going to become a model at 43, Chris. I don't think that's what God's got for you. Like, do you know what I mean? They can speak truth into you too and say, no, you're making that up. That's nonsense. And I think for me also prophetic words comes into this too. And again, I said this to Ben earlier, but you can correct me another time. I won't care because I'm not here. But I think prophetic words are confirmational, not directional. I think they confirm what's already been going on in your heart, what God's been speaking to you about, and they're prophetic words at the end. Maybe sometimes they happen at the start. Maybe we need that. For me personally, I've experienced it where all these things are into place, and then at the end, God said, I'm going to call you into this. I'm like, yes, I'm on the right track. So I think that they're really good, helpful tips to know, am I called to something or not? So what should we do? If you're a follower of Jesus, follow Jesus like the life that you want depends on it. Follow Jesus like the life that you desire that's in your heart, that hopefully he's put in there, depends on it. Stay in the vine. We talk about this constantly in this church, about staying in the presence of God. In the book of John, it talks about stay in the vine. I think it says like 10 times in one chapter, maybe even more. Stay in the vine. We can become Christians. We get excited. This is all on fire. This is brilliant, on fire in a good way. And then things just start to fizzle because we don't spend time with him. It's really simple. It's like you don't charge your phone, it's not going to work. Spending time with Jesus is staying plugged in, playing charged up too. Stay in the vine. Stay spending time with him every day. Discipleship year, what did I say? Your homework this week is to spend an hour at least a day with God in prayer. That was usually when I'd forgotten to set homework. But that was the homework, was to they'll do better next year. It's going to be so much better next year without me running. But the point is that you can spend time with God every single day. It is the most important thing, and it's the thing where I see transformation the most in people, is those who spend time with God every single day. And if you're a Christian, pray stupid prayers. Pray prayers like, God, use me, or I don't care the cost. Do you know what? He'll probably take you at your word, and that is scary. And I tell you, that's when you go, why did I pray that stupid prayer? Because then that becomes uncomfortable. It's because he's growing us and he's moving us forward. But that is when we see him turn up. Step out in faith. I'm going to use an analogy. I realize some of you guys might not get this in the room. Maybe you will do if you like old films. I think did you say someone showed it at baptism about Indiana Jones and the Crusaders, the Lost, what's the last film one? Indiana Jones and then the Last Crusade. And there's a bit in there where he's to step out onto a bridge, but he can't see the bridge, it's invisible, until he stands on the bridge, and then it becomes visible. YouTube it. It's a really good scene about a leap of faith. My point is sometimes we don't know where we're going to land, but if God said to take a step, take that step. It's scary. I totally get it. I'm in it. I'm stepping right now. I'm in that bit. I'm looking forward to the landing. But take a step of faith. Choose to believe what God says. Choose to believe what he said about you. That you are great and you are worth so much. You are worth so much that his son died for you. That you're so worthy of all that he's got for you and all of his love. Choose to believe him. And in that, choose to believe what he says about you. Believe the scripture that God works all things to the good of those who love him and accord according to his purpose. If you wouldn't call yourself a Christian, I'd say, is what you're doing working in life? Does it feel like, yeah, my life's great? If it is, you may feel like right now that you're not interested, that I'm good on my own. But most people I speak to, that's not the case. As I said, all the top people who are at the top of their game or whatever would still say there's something missing. There's a void inside of us that only the love of God can fill. And only knowing who we are in him and our purposes in him can start to fill us too. And yeah, if you don't know Jesus, get to know him. Take a risk like Peter did. Peter didn't know Jesus, and then he had this invitation from Jesus to do something, to get to know him more. Why not? You've literally got nothing to lose. You can go home. You don't have to tell anyone. You can go home tonight, be in your room and say, go on then, Jesus. I'm here. Tell me you're real. Reveal yourself to me. He wants to. He's so desperate to do this.
Thanks for listening. We pray that God has spoken to you during this recording. For any more information, please visit the website. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our episodes. See you next week. God bless.